As many of you know, lots of people are talking about and thinking about an appropriate memorial and what ought to be done about the site at Ground Zero, the former site of the World Trade Center. Last July, 6 design proposals to rebuild it were presented to widespread public criticism. In response, the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation ordered a new design competition. And last month, 7 teams of architects offered a new set of proposals for the site. The New York Times called the architects' presentation a master class in making sense of space and function, civic commitment, and public emotion. One team of prominent New York-based architects presented a proposal entitled Memorial Square. The architects who created this proposal join me now. Richard Meier of Richard Meier & Partners, Peter Eisenman of Eisenman Architects, Charles Gwathmey of Gwathmey & Siegel, and Steven Holl of Steven Holl Architects. I am pleased to have them back at this table. And I should say, for the audience who knows of my appreciation of architecture, and other friends of mine who have made proposals will be here, and we'll have an ongoing conversation. And I suspect that everybody at this table would welcome that idea, because this is, as all of them would say, a very important time in the life of this city, in the life of design and architecture and creativity, and in the life of creating something that is appropriate in time and space and function. So this will be a series of conversations about something that I admire, architects together creating, in the best sense of that word, their own vision for what might be done in Lower Manhattan at Ground Zero. Having said that, I welcome each of you. It's great to have you here. Pleasure. Let me start with this, and I'll talk to Richard Meier about this first. I mean, these are people of immense talent, and I don't know how they worked, and we'll hear more about that. I don't know if you were the captain of the team, but everybody participated here. What was this about? Here you are, architects who normally compete with each other, working together.
Well, Charlie, we came together because I think we shared a mutual desire to say something about what might happen here. It began when the New York Times asked us, with a group of architects, to think about Ground Zero and look at different aspects of it. And that work that we did together made us realize that we couldn't work with a team of 20 or 25 architects, but we could work as a team of 4. And the 4 of us felt that we had a common attitude. We had a history. 3 of us, Charlie, Peter, and myself, go back to the publication which we made called 5 Architects more than 30 years ago. And we thought we wanted to work together with a very talented younger architect, Steven Holl, to join us and to say something about what should happen here at Ground Zero. We're all New Yorkers. We live, we work here. Our children grew up here. We feel that we had something to say that's very important, and hopefully that we might be able to influence some aspects of what would happen in the future at the site of the World Trade Center.
Okay. I put this in the context of the fact that there was this disaster. Everybody now recognized it in the beginning. People looked at the original designs and said they were bland, they weren't interesting, and therefore this great push to give architects their day. What I don't understand for sure is that so you created a design, so Daniel Lipskin created a design, other design teams. To what purpose? How is that process going to work?
Which process?
The process of all these presentations which we saw. We saw an example of yours. We'll see more of yours. But is somebody, what are they going to do now that you have presented the best of your creativity to LMDC?
Well, what you hope will happen, and what you know has happened already, is that the public consciousness of what architecture can do has been raised. The level of aspiration and the level of awareness is gigantic now because of this. And what we hope is that as visionary and compassionate architects, which believe architecture can make change and change the whole idea of a place, is that the pressure of all of us 4 here and all of the architects that participated, the pressure of these designs, which are aspirational and have vision, and talk about the future and talk about the past, will evoke the kind of reaction and passion that will change the status quo.
One good thing about this, Peter, it seems to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that for the first time in a long time, because of the enormity of the event and what needs to be done, it's an interesting time because tragedy, has brought about a great sense of architecture talking about. Not because architecture is feeding on tragedy, but there is a need to do something. And for the first time in a long time, there's more conversation about the role of architecture. I still don't understand, because in the beginning it was said that all these designs, somebody might pick something from here and something from here. My impression is that's no longer the rule. What is the rule there? What is the expectation there?
Well, I think we're the wrong people to ask what the expectation is.
But you must know, because you're in the middle of the process.
Yeah. Let me go back and say this. Adolf Loos, a famous architect, said at the beginning of the century, architecture is about monuments and graves. And I think it is. The spirit of a culture, the spirit of a city. And I think what this process has done is mobilized the city. We have never seen publicity all over the world about New York City, and good publicity. I mean, it's amazing. Asheville, North Carolina, Hartford, Connecticut, Vienna, wherever. What I'm saying is that architecture finally is where it should be, in the political, social process. And I don't think you can turn it off. What they decided at the start, they wanted to do this, they wanted to do that. I think what has happened because of media, because of programs like this, because of the response, don't forget, it's the first time that what you would say are internationally good architects, that is, architects who were not commercial, but really interested in ideas, participated in a competition in New York City. That's a first since a long time. And I think we're...
To build something that was worthy of whatever amount of creativity and energy they had to bring to the table.
And I think that we are on the crest of a wave that needs to keep moving. And we're going to do everything we can around this table, with you, with others, to see that something happens.
Something happens, meaning what?
What I would think something is that I think at least two, and if not three teams with very different schemes should be picked to go forward for 3 or 4 months to develop the ideas, to get a chance, because we had 6 weeks to work, to really work together with the city, with the community groups, because we were kept from these groups, to the victims' families, to the political groups, to talk to people and work with them to refine our ideas. I think that's important.
To unleash the outreach, so to speak.
But bring it together with us, not say select this scheme or that scheme. Have 3 schemes go forward.
But how can 3 schemes go forward? Because some people have made this observation. These things can't be mixed. I mean,
not mix them. No. 3 different schemes. I'm saying is give the people a chance to work with these groups,
and
find
ultimately choose one.
And choose one. Ultimately choose
absolutely.
one. Yes.
Who in the end will make that choice? I mean, obviously the power relies with the Port Authority.
Well, no, I don't know. Can I tell you? When we did a monument in Germany for the Holocaust, Helmut Kohl went in and said, I want this one. 95% of the people might have said no. He said, I am the elected chancellor. I think it's up to Pataki or Bloomberg to take political courage and will, listen, but leaders are supposed to listen and then act. They have to take some risk, Charlie.
No. Let me talk about the inspiration for the particular piece here. Stephen, tell me about that. I mean, when people see this...
One of the aspirations that we had together as a team, with our first meeting, we said we'd like to make something that's in the spirit of a public space, a great public space for New York, which means not a signature of Peter, not a signature of Richard, not a signature of me or Charles, a truly collective work in the spirit. And I said, you know, if we could realize our work, people would say in the future, Rockefeller Center, that was then. This is now. What could we do which was not a signature piece, but would really be about public space? So the core of our project is what we call Memorial Square, is really, if you will, a cube of space 1,000 feet on a site. It's an enormous public space that's open, with the buildings forming gateways, and I call thresholds of reflection onto this enormous public space.
But it's not just a square, by the way. Make sure our plan is the only one on grade, by the way, Stephen. It's the only one that extends into the community, that asks the community, neighborhoods, housing, visitors, whatever, to join together. It knits it, it doesn't separate itself, doesn't dig a hole, it doesn't raise itself, it's on grade and extends into the city. I think
and into the river.
Yeah.
The largest memorial space in our project is a finger that extends into the Hudson River, something that I really strongly believe in. This could be a public space in Manhattan that connects to the river. I mean, that makes it even, it's not only larger than Rockefeller Center, but imagine that you can walk on this public space and through these groves of trees and reach the Hudson River. What a place of reflection. What a great place for gathering. And what a great opportunity for the memorial competition to be placed on a site large enough, 5,000 people can gather there, that also leaves the Memorial Square active with city and urban movement.
Is there looming over this thing this notion that there's a public appetite for height?
I think there's a public appetite for an image which is higher than the average height of most of the buildings in Lower Manhattan. Now, how much higher that is, I don't think it's necessarily to be twice the scale of what's there. I think that it has to be visible from New Jersey, from Queens, from Brooklyn, from all of the boroughs, and it has to have a presence. And I think that is a symbolic presence that is very important, not only to the people of New York City and the people of America, but the people of the world. There's something about what was there that towered above. And I think that as long as that image of something higher is there, height is immaterial.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say about the buildings, which I think is most interesting, is that they're flexible in the sense that over time, as Richard said, they can change programs and accommodate housing. They can accommodate hotels. They can also accommodate offices. But the image of the buildings is so serene and so important as an iconic placemaker in the city, that it makes silhouette, it makes portals on the ground, as Steven said, and it engages New York in both the pedestrian plane and the sky plane in a way which establishes a sense of place. And it's memorable. It's also haunting, and it has this sort of eerie kind of presence of memory and speculation, positive speculation, that we tried very hard to do. It's not about architectural gymnastics and not about this moment in style.
And not about signature?
No, not about signature. It's truly a collaboration that way. And we think the image is incredibly powerful and compelling.
Peter, before I go any further, the title Memorial Square came from?
We felt that the idea of the ground plane was the most important thing, that and the framing of that ground plane, as Stephen and Charles and Richard have said, with portals, we wanted to give a simple, direct name, and that was it. In other words, there's Lincoln Square, there's Rockefeller Center, there's Bryant Park. We wanted to say it's Memorial Square. That's it.
Our point here is not, as I say, is to take a series of really people who are the best of their profession, and see how they have come to deal with what I assume may be considered, notwithstanding all the great work you've done, perhaps the most important thing you've ever attempted. Fair enough to say among each of you?
No question.
Herbert Mouchon writes for the New York Times, this is the one people are going to be fighting about. Superficially, the design ignores the lessons that postmodernism was supposed to have taught us about context, scale, accommodation, reassure. It may strike some as a throwback to the megastructural superblocks of the 1960s. So what? The project makes its own kind of statement. What statement do you think the project makes?
I think what Herbert is really not looking at is also the green aspects of the building. There's more than 7 different properties. But when you look at this, it's a flexible hybrid building, which means function is not expressed. Hotels in the upper levels have operable windows that open into a cavity space that allows air circulation. You can open your window. You have, we have a photovoltaic cell system embedded in the inner and outer skin that drinks in the sunshine during the day. And when the buildings glow at night, it's not electricity; it's solar power that's powering it.
Go ahead.
No, the statement that we're trying to make here is that there's no place in this city, there's no public place in this city, there's no gathering place in this city, with the exception of Central Park, that has the potential that this place has. We have the opportunity here to make the most important public space and the most important public statement that has ever existed in this city and probably will ever exist. And we have a responsibility to the public to make that space and see that that space exists here. And that will include cultural activities, educational activities, places where people will live and work, places for visitors, but it's a place of coming together because of the highly charged emotion which has been the result of this terrible event, that everyone wants to take part in it. Not just New Yorkers, not just Americans, but people from every part of the world. And I think that as architects, we have a responsibility to the public to make the most important public place that can be established in our lifetime.
Yeah.
What I think we tried to do was to bring the everyday with the sacred. That we were talking about a sacred precinct, a sacred memory that everybody will share for a long time with the everyday. And I think that was the balancing act that we tried to do. This wasn't about signature, it wasn't about architectural expression. It was about bringing the ordinary, the everyday together with some sense of the sacred, and that everybody would understand what that was. And that was the task.
What reservations did you have about when you agreed on what you were doing here? I can't imagine how this process worked.
It worked because we sat around a table together
and fought
and drew together and worked together and we
go ahead.
Yeah, we really worked at a drawing together.
Yeah, we did.
And is the end result something that you all are?
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Even though you didn't get everything you wanted, or maybe it represents something.
Even though Paul Goldberger said I wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You were in it. Yeah. But it represents, in the end,
it represents, I think, a collective attitude, which we had from the very beginning, and a shared attitude that what we were going to do was to make not only a great place, but a place that had meaning on many, many levels. And each of us, I think, contributed in a major way to making that happen.
Did you have any reservations because of size? And because somebody might not appreciate the other dimensions what you knew were there?
I think when people understand the plan and the whole idea of the existing footprints generating the parks, and that the idea of these buildings making portals into and away from the site, the integration of the transportation center as a major new room in New York, larger than Grand Central Station, becoming the vestibule and the entry space to downtown New York, right? But a space which is memorable, which is active, which is participatory, engages the site, engages people coming and leaving the city every day, that this is a major place. And the height thing, I just want to comment, to me, making the tallest building in the world has no significance, because right now the tallest building in the world is in Malaysia.
Right.
Could be in Singapore. Who cares?
Right.
What you want to make, what you want to make is a memorable image that is relevant today, and that as time goes on will be relevant 30 years from now.
Each of you have, I assume, there have been a series of debates and meetings around town at various architectural forums, right? What's the debate about now? Beyond the respective values of the individual proposals by the teams, what's the great debate taking place now?
I think there is an issue, and a very important, what I consider to be an ideological issue.
A core debate.
A core debate. And it's not going to be solved by printing images on front pages of paper, the one-off good-looking shot. I believe the image is about whether this city looks forward or backward, whether this city is consumed with cars or whether there's a place for people and a place for other kinds of cultural activities that are not consumed by commerce, by economic decisions, by developers, but by a public spirit. And I think that that spirit is echoed in many of the schemes. There are schemes that look forward and those that look backward.
Okay, let me ask this question, though, because, I mean, clearly that's it, and that's what's got everybody excited at the possibility of looking forward and making an impact that will be part of your own legacy. Having said that, and part of the legacy of the city. Some will say, in the most practical-minded way, this is not going to be decided by architects. This is, to build buildings, you have to have somebody willing to pay for them. How is that going to happen? And are people who make the money to build great buildings?
Well, let me say something.
Go ahead.
This is an opportunity for the first time, really, for the developer world to step back and say, we want to be patrons.
Right.
We want to make something which animates our legacy, which makes us committed to fine architecture, which makes us committed to our city, and to give, it's not giving back, it's to give something critical. And if that spirit prevailed, and if the politicians, as Peter says, begin to take authority, right, and to say, I'm committed to this, and not let the status quo just sort of continue, then I think this is possible.
If the political will comes together with the creative will, then it's possible.
That's right.
I'm out of time. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Steven. Thank you, Charles.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. See you tomorrow night.